Hi, I'm Erika Del Sordo. Welcome to today's Talk with Erika. Thank you for subscribing to my YouTube channel and audio podcasts. You can find all of my links, including my mobile app, in the info section. Any links mentioned in this show will also be in the info section. Now, with me today is Alan Lazaros. Alan is one of the hosts of Next Level Podcast, which has published more than 540 episodes and counting. He is also a peak performance expert, speaker, and fitness coach. Alan is lucky enough to be getting coached by both David Meltzer and Evan Carmichael. Now, even as a young man, Alan has always been an achiever. He had a dream, a vision, and the intention of pursuing all of those. He got accepted into the university of his dreams and pursued the life that he thought he wanted. He was the life of the party. He was someone who people wanted to be around. He had a good career going for him. But one fateful day, when he almost lost his life to a car accident, everything changed. He started questioning the life he was living. Was this the legacy he wanted to leave behind? Now, that pivotal moment led Alan to personal development and the desire to become his next level self. And now he wants to share that with us. Alan, welcome.
Thank you so much. That was an awesome introduction, and I can tell that you have a background in reporting. I'm very impressed. I like it. Good start.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I'm very happy to have you with me today because as we were talking pre-show, uh, your mission, your motivation really speaks to myself, my followers, and everyone. You've got this story. You've completely turned your life around. You're extremely successful, and that really resonates with everyone. So that pivotal moment, let's talk about from the beginning. How is your new desire for personal development born?
Yeah. So I think that, so I'll take you back way, way back. So when I first was born, I was 2 years old. I had a tough start. So very, very tough start. And the reason why is because my father passed away when I was two in a car accident.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry.
so, thank you. So I think that a lot of people have an intellectual understanding of death. And I think that mine's always been an emotional one. And my sister was 5 at the time, and so my mom had to figure out how to raise 2 kids as a single mom who was a stay-at-home mom. And, so that was kind of the beginning, and so I think that, I kinda live by this philosophy that your adversity can be your advantage if you use it as the training ground to really build emotional muscle, build resilience, build spiritual soundness, and all that stuff, and so that'll be kind of a through line in this, but basically, I'm 10 years old, driving past WPI. WPI is Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's a school in Worcester, Massachusetts, and it's kind of like a mini MIT. So everyone's heard of MIT. It's kind of like that, but like a little bit, quote unquote, less reputable, slightly. Now, she basically said, Alan, you're good at math. You're really smart. My uncle at the time was the track and field coach there. And she said, you should go to WPI. Really smart people go there. She taught me this simple principle from when I was very young that I've never forgotten. She said, Alan, you can be a CEO or you can be a farmer. I'm going to love you either way. But if you're a CEO, you can wake up one day and decide, you know what? I don't like my job. I'm going to be a farmer. But you can't necessarily go the other way around. One time I told that story and someone reached out and said, my aunt's a farmer and she works so hard. This is nothing against farmers. My mom was trying to explain to a little kid in a way I could understand. Basically, the idea was aim really high and you'll have choices. Alan, life is about choices. And I never forgot that. So I aimed super high. So she told me, you're really smart. You're really good at math. You should be an engineer. Engineers make a lot of money. With a lot of money, you'll have choices. Awesome. Planted a dream in my heart. Fast forward a little bit, we're doing my college essay. She's helping me with it. I did get into WPI, went to WPI. I did electrical and computer engineering. Then I did my MBA, and I did a lot of soul searching and job hopping. So I worked for a company called iRobot. I worked for Sensata Technologies, which is used to be Texas Instruments. I worked for a little company called Oz Development. I started a little company called Campus Libre. And I did a lot of job hopping. I worked in global product management. I worked in engineering. I worked in sales. And then eventually I landed on a company called Cognex. Now, at Cognex, I started an inside sales team and then eventually was promoted to outside sales. And then I managed all of Western New England. That's when the car accident happened. So I'm 26. I'm out of college. I've got my master's in business. I've got my electrical and computer engineering degree. I've got, I'm earning nearly $200,000 in 2014. I did. And in 2015, I'm up in New Hampshire. And that's when the car accident happened. And so I'm driving to TGI Fridays with my little cousin, and I thought the road stayed right. It actually stayed left. I ended up on the wrong side of the road. I was looking down at the GPS. It was one of those dark winter nights, and it was one of those bad winters where we had a lot of potholes in New England, and like the signs were literally covered with snow because the snowbanks. And so I think there was a yield sign, but I did not yield, and I should have. So, anyways, I look up, and it felt like a millisecond, but I saw the brightest lights I'd ever seen. Big lift kitted truck, like obnoxiously lift kitted, like very high off the ground, right? And so I literally had that moment. And for anyone who's never had this moment, it's hard to explain, but I had that sincere moment of this is the end. Like there's no way I survived this. And that moment that people talk about in movies or have all thought about or contemplated, it's very different to experience it. Fortunately, I was driving a 2004 Volkswagen Passat, which I used to call the tank because it's like a very German engineered heavy steel trap of a car. And both airbags did deploy. My cousin hurt his knee. I hurt my face on the airbag. We were okay, fortunately.
Wow.
Uh, now, this is why it was really challenging for me, though. So I've seen the pictures of my dad's car. And in my speeches, I often show a picture of my car because it's like those pictures are not very different. And so for me, I'm sitting in an armchair drinking whiskey, just literally like my little cousin was 17 and he was already tweeting it. And like that invincibility complex of like,
Hmm.
you're a kid, you don't really understand the implications of what could have just happened.
Hmm.
I'm sitting there, I call it shaking the snow globe. It shook everything I thought I knew. It made me question everything I was doing. It made me wonder to myself a few questions. How courageously did I fight for what I believe in? How fiercely did I love? Did the work I do in the world really matter? What was my legacy? And none of my answers, honestly, none of my answers really impressed me or made me proud or made me happy or made me fulfilled. And so I had that second chance. And so the interesting thing about this is that I think it hit home with me a little extra because my dad didn't have a second chance. So I'm 26 when this happens. My father passed away when he was 28.
Oh
And I
boy.
spent my whole life hearing stories about John, my dad, because I look like him. And the interesting thing that I came to realize in this moment is basically this fundamental truth. Nobody ever talks about how my dad died except for me because of the car accident story I'm telling you right now. But everybody always talked about John, but they never talked about how he died. Literally never. I don't know if I've ever even heard anyone talk about the way he died. They always talk about stories of how he lived. And so I live in Worcester right now, or the studio I'm at right now is in Worcester, and Holden isn't far from here. My mom literally said they had to practically shut down Holden because 600 people came to his funeral. Everybody
Wow.
loved John. And so in 28 years, he made this my whole life. I've heard stories of John and the impact that he had on people. And this is what I've learned. The impact we have on others is way bigger than we can possibly understand while we're here. And I got a second chance to really lean into that. And so I live by this simple quote now of you cannot see the stars during the day. They're always there, but sometimes it takes the darkness to see clearly that which you simply could not. Within the light, I have a necklace around my neck with a true North Star, and this
Wow.
represents my purpose. And I have a purpose prayer that I recite every single day. And when you're in the dark, I'll say this for anyone listening or watching: emotional pain is a guarantee. What you do with it is what makes the difference. Every single one of us is going to face some form of trauma, some form of adversity, some form of emotional pain. But you have a choice every time. You can either develop a virtue or you can escape the pain into a vice. Now, the part of my story I didn't fully illuminate was that I had a drinking challenge. So I drank too much and too often. I definitely partied in college. And then in corporate America, in sales, I was in technical sales. Cognex's motto, this is nothing against them, is work hard, play hard. I used to say work hard, play harder. And so the star that I saw when I was in the dark was basically a second chance to really live a virtuous, meaningful life in the service of others. And rather than just some phrase, basically I went all in on my dreams. And I never really looked back. Now, there's two things that I saw that I never saw before. One was Tony Robbins' TED Talk. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's super powerful. And then the other one was a book by a woman named Bronnie Ware. She lives in Australia. She wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying.
Hmm.
She worked in hospice for 8 years, and she thought her job was to take care of them, but her real job was to listen. And she saw these common patterns of I wish, I wish, I wish. She was working with the terminally ill. These people are terminally ill. They're projected to die, and they all had all these regrets. And she noticed they all had the same regrets. So from that day that I found that book to now, I have a flashcard in my pocket with all 5 regrets of the dying, and now I do what I call reverse engineering regret. The number one regret of the dying is I wish I had lived a life true to myself and not what others expected of me.
Hmm.
My mom did me a great service by believing in me and by planting a dream in my heart. But what I should have done is check my own inner compass and say, yeah, engineers make a lot of money. Yeah, I'm good at math, but that's not enough to make a lifelong decision. And so now I went all in on my dreams, and I don't allow the opinions of others to dictate what I do and don't do, say and don't say, think and don't think, believe and don't believe. And now I'm basically what I used to do at Cognex and industrial automation is the more successful I was, the less jobs there were for other people because we helped people automate how to do. We sold vision cameras that basically were quality assurance. And so the more robots and automation, the less jobs for uneducated people. That always kind of hurt my heart. So now my dream is to empower others, create entrepreneurs, create businesses, help people become marketable in the future. Because one thing I can tell you, and COVID has proven this again and again and again, is that most uneducated work will be automated.
Mhm.
Machines, software, robots, they're coming, whether we like it or not. And I can tell you, I have a technology degree. It's coming and it's coming fast. We have to retool, we have to rethink, we have to re strategize. And that's what I'm all about now.
That's so true. That's an amazing story. I want to thank you for sharing that because it does resonate so much with so many people. It's tough though, like you were saying, some people need a dark moment, a dark spot in their lives to change everything. It's really rough to explain to someone who is doing well, let's say in corporate America, making the money, to say, is this really what you want to do? Is this really what you regret? But that same person might go through the same thing, a near fatal car accident, and then they go, oh my goodness. And that's really tough to see unless you go through that dark blinding spot. So it's really tough I feel like it's very tough to explain to people how you've gone from one thing, being successful at corporate, to going into entrepreneurship and being successful at that and being happy.
It is
That's
very
how I feel. So when did you start the Next Level podcast then?
so it originally started as the Hyperconscious podcast. And then we eventually found out that a lot of people don't know what that means. Uh, what hyperconscious means is acutely aware. In other words, if you're living an unexamined life, we've all heard the Socrates quote of the unexamined life is not worth living. It was either Aristotle or Socrates, I forget which. But that's what that's how this was born. The next level you, the next level university, it's basically about looking at the decisions you're making, looking at the choices you're making and constantly mastering and remastering your own choices to make sure you're in alignment with your highest self. And rather than just some like esoteric phrase, I mean like genuinely asking yourself the tough questions. 0 to 10, how fulfilled am I? 0
Hmm.
to 10, how happy am I? From 0 to 10, how well is my life designed with my greatest level of growth and contribution? These questions will change your life if you really sit and answer them. Now, here's the scary part. What if you're a 4? Now, the next question is how do you get a little bit closer to 10? And so for anyone out there who's in corporate and who was like me and like not necessarily it's interesting. It's like we're not really unhappy, but we're not really that happy, but we're not unhappy enough to do anything about it.
Right.
It's like
Right.
this lukewarm middle ground, which is just really dangerous in my opinion. It's almost like, I mean, all of us, I shouldn't say all of us, most of us have stayed in a relationship way too long. I know I did. And it's almost like, and this is a simple phrase that I live by, but it's not a fun phrase. And a lot of what I talk about really isn't sexy, honestly. Um, when the pain is great enough, you will change.
Mhm.
It's where's your threshold? I mean, sometimes it takes getting to 350 pounds in order to start a gym regimen.
Right.
For me, the car accident was my turning point, and I'm grateful for it now because it really was enough pain to finally get me to wake up and really change. Because before that, I think I always had goals and dreams. My goal was to be a Fortune 50 CEO, and I was on the path to do that, but I definitely wasn't as clear of my core values. I wasn't as clear on who I am. I wasn't as clear on
Mhm.
my purpose. And so I think the unfortunate truth is that I think it requires the dark to see the light. I think
Mhm.
that's why I love that quote so much about the stars. Like the stars are out right now, but you can't see them because it's daytime. When you're in the emotional pain, when you're in the dark, you're gonna be grateful for something you weren't grateful for before. You're gonna notice someone or something you never noticed before. Bronnie Ware's book was already out there in the world. Her TED Talk was already out there in the world. Same with Tony Robbins' TED Talk. I wasn't in enough pain to see it.
Mhm.
When you're in pain, you're searching. You're searching for solutions. If you don't escape it, that's the key. Now, if you just get lost in Netflix when you're in pain, which a lot of us do, or lost in food, or lost in alcohol, or lost in marijuana, and I have nothing particularly against any of those things. What I do have something against is escaping your own pain instead of using it as a chance to contemplate your life.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think when we succeed, we celebrate, but when we fail, that's where the real tweaks happen.
Mhm.
That's where you contemplate, and that's when you really start to examine your life. And so if anyone's out there right now and they don't think they're that happy, ask yourself the tough questions and have the courage to answer them. And then start to make a little bit of a change. One more percent, more percent, more percent. It doesn't have to be an overnight transformation. It's not like a movie montage. Like just
Right.
start the trajectory, you know?
Right, right, right. Exactly. Exactly. I believe in God and I pray. That's what gets me going through my day. But I do believe that if you do sit there and ask God to change, what's going on, that He listens and maybe it doesn't happen again like that. It's not going to, flash in front of you and that's it. There's a set of events that occur, but I think that people little by little you know, need to make the change. I have a similar story. I won't get into it too much, but in 2011, I had a severe car accident as well,
Mm,
and I didn't make my big changes then, but it opened me up to. I had some temporary angels come into my life, and it really opened up a whole different world for me. So. That's exactly when it all happens. I wouldn't have seen that had that not happened to me. So I
mm.
completely understand what you're saying.
Mm. And I'm
So,
grateful that you took that second chance as something magnificent. I'm sure again, we talk about post traumatic stress disorder.
mhm,
And
mhm.
double yellow lines scared me. I was claustrophobic after the car accident. I had some PTSD for sure. But what we don't talk enough about is post traumatic growth.
Right,
And I
right.
think that, like you said, God, whether it's nature or God or the universe or the Tao or spirit, it'll open the door for you. It'll show you the door, but you have to walk through it. And I
Mhm,
think that when you're in pain, you see doors you never saw before. It's
mhm.
just it's just a thing. As long as you don't escape it. Again, as long as you don't escape into vice. Yeah.
Right, right, right. Exactly, exactly. I don't drink alcohol anymore.
Right.
it's so much better. You see everything in
500,
a totally different light.
570 days. You see, I'm 571 days as of yesterday. You see everything totally differently.
You do.
I'm so proud of you. That's awesome.
Well,
Congratulations. That's
thank
huge.
you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, it's been a couple years now. I want to say I stopped in 2017. And it
Congrats.
really does. It really does because when you're having a bad day, when you're that is the thing you go to. Well, I'm just going to have a glass of wine because I'm having a bad day. What happens when you don't do that? And you know what taught me that? I have to tell you, when I was in that car wreck, I had developed a heart issue and I couldn't drink caffeine anymore. And I was like, well, wait till I go into work at 5 o'clock in the morning. What do you mean I can't have caffeine anymore? It's
Hey,
not going to happen. And it happened. And I drink decaf now. And you know what? That's what gets you through. It can happen. You can do anything you want. You can, oh, I have to have my caffeine. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't need to have a glass of wine. You don't need that. But different folks, different strokes. So again, not judging, but that's work. That's what's worked for me, and that's what's made me see that you don't need those things because I can't drink caffeine anymore. Sometimes it slips in and whatever, but I know you know what I mean. So, who's been your most inspiring guest? I'd like to know that. Who's been on your show who's been the most inspiring that really resonated with you?
Mm, who's been the most inspiring guest? That is a great question. We've had so many. Let me think. I would say Eric Legrand. The reason why, so Eric Legrand he played football at Rutgers
Okay.
University. He was projected to be in the NFL. He was genuinely a world-class football player, defensive tackle, I believe. And he got paralyzed from the neck down.
Jeez.
And to this day, we've interviewed him several times. I met him, met his mom, met his dog. Like, we've interviewed him 3 or 4 times at this point. And what's interesting is he can't move his arms or his legs, and he literally does social media with like a thing in his mouth, like with his phone, you know. And what's I think why he inspires me so much is that he's so sincerely happy. And it's not fake. It's not like he's just trying to be happy. I feel like he's sincerely like fulfilled and happy, and he's hilarious, you know, and it's just like it's a reminder to all of us that we have so much, we just forget to look at it. The times in my life where I had the most emotional and spiritual pain was when I was ungrateful. At the end of the day, I think that's why I had so much regret, is because I wasn't taking my health seriously. I wasn't taking my life seriously. I was definitely chasing pleasure at the expense of fulfillment. Really think about that one for a second. Like, anyone out there right now, like, we always have an opportunity for immediate pleasure versus long-term fulfillment, always, in every choice, right? Do I go to the gym, or do I go home and drink a glass of wine? I'm not making either one wrong. I'm telling you one of them's more fulfilling. I'm sorry. It's true. It's
Right.
true. You know, um, I didn't set up the rules. I just try to understand the laws of nature. And so that's my most inspiring guest is Eric Legrand, because he's happier and more fulfilled than 99% of people, and yet he can't move anything from his neck down.
Wow. Wow. Stories like that really make you look at, oh my goodness, I can't get to the gym a few days a week. I can't do this. Those are the most inspiring stories to see what other people go through and how they live. And then you look and you go, I complained about that.
Yep.
So,
Seriously. He
and
That's his
yeah.
purpose now. He's a reminder. I've asked him. He's a reminder to all of us of what we're taking for granted.
Hmm.
I have a flashcard in my pocket at all times. It's right here, a bunch of them. One of them says there's someone in a hospital bed right now begging God for the opportunity that I have to make a difference.
Hmm.
Someone's in a hospital bed right now begging God for the opportunity to do what you and I are doing right now. Like, how dare we not be grateful for that and not just say, like, I'm grateful? No, no, no. Prove it. Prove it
Hmm.
with your actions. A lot of people say, oh, yeah, I'm grateful for my health. No, you're not. If you were, you would exercise. And that's okay. I'm not judging you, but that's how I feel about me. I'm going to look in the mirror. I don't blame anyone. I look in the mirror. If I'm grateful for my health, don't just say it, prove it. Go to the gym every day. Do what's hard and necessary rather than what's fun and easy. Lead by example.
Right.
Um, Abraham Lincoln has that great quote of leading by example is not the best way to lead. It's the only way,
Hmm. Yeah.
which is just awesome. So, anyway, sorry.
It is. No, no, no. Please, by all means. And by the way, you're incredibly inspiring and motivating. And I love your podcast. It's truly incredible. I recommend everyone watch every episode because you guys do a great job. Which, by the way, I mentioned you guys. You have a co-host, Kevin. How did you two meet?
I really appreciate your kind words. Thank you. Thank you so much for
You're
that.
welcome.
Really, it means the world because I take my work very seriously. And if you really enjoy the show, that we pour our heart and soul into that.
You can tell. You can tell.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So how did me and Kevin meet? Kevin and I. Kevin and I met. He he was the first. Okay, so I had a podcast called Conversations Change Lives. It was at the very start. I only had like 3 episodes. And he was in the first episode. And then he was like, "Holy crap," when we got done with the interview, he was like, "Holy crap, that was amazing." And he asked one of my co-hosts at the time, uh, "What if you could do that for a living?" And my co-host, his name's Andrew, literally said, "You can. You can do that for a living. Like Joe Rogan does it, right?" And
Right.
like he bought all the equipment the next day and he started the Hyperconscious podcast. And the Hyperconscious podcast, the premise was basically change the way you think, change the way you act, change the way you live. Now, Kevin had a suicidal challenge and he reached out to me when he was considering that. And I basically was there for him in his darkest moment. And I would argue that that's what really bonded us, that moment. And then after that, we were doing what we called Conversations Change Lives meets the Hyperconscious podcast. And we did like a series of like 10 that way. And eventually we were just like, honestly, we're just podcasting together all the time. Like we should just make this a thing. And that's when we chose the Hyperconscious podcast. And then eventually we rebranded to Next Level University because our mission has evolved and we want to be associated with learning. Everybody, no matter where you are in your life, you have a spotless future. It's the most empowering thought in the world, in my opinion. No matter what you've done, no matter what you've not done, no matter how hard your childhood was or how easy, you have a spotless future just like me. And from this moment on, you can start making better choices and becoming better. And no matter what level you're at, there's always another level of fulfillment, of love, of joy, of greatness, of success. We want to help you get there. And we want to be a mentor in your pocket. That's like the vision. It's like I picture someone walking down the street and we're a mentor in their pocket. And it's exactly what Kevin and I would have needed growing up. We both grew up without fathers. I had a stepdad for a time there, but basically his father left when he was born and he was raised by his mother and grandmother. I was raised by my mom and older sister. And so we have that. So we both grew up in the same town and we have that. It's interesting. I think we're natural masculine energies, but we were raised by the feminine and we didn't have to put on that masculine front to appease a father figure. And so it ended up being a huge strength, even though that came with a lot of challenges, obviously. But that's really what's connected us and kept us together this whole time.
That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. Kevin's going to be on with me actually next week. So I've got you on this week and he'll be following you. So I'd love to hear his story as well. What is it that you tell others with similar stories? Maybe whether it be entrepreneurship, going through a dark phase. What would you want to leave with folks listening to this?
Hmm. I have a hypothetical story that I think is impactful that I would leave you with. So, okay, there's a mother in the park with a 2-year-old son. And this actually kind of happened to me. So it's not fully hypothetical, but it is hypothetical. You'll understand why in a second. And the mother runs into their friend and they haven't seen their friend in a while and they're catching up. They're talking. The 2-year-old had recently just learned how to crawl, crawls into the street, God forbid, gets hit by a car and killed. Okay, hypothetical story. Unimaginable pain and adversity, okay? Now, you and I, and this is why I tell a story, you and I could argue for days about should the mother have been paying more attention? Should the car driver have been paying more attention? And honestly, yeah, both of them should have been, okay? But here's what we would agree on no matter who you talk to. It's not the 2-year-old's fault. It's not the 2-year-old's responsibility. Why? Because the 2-year-old was not aware that cars are dangerous. If you listen to this show right now, this is my main takeaway. Hopefully, it illuminated something that made you more aware. Now you have a responsibility, in my opinion. That's my belief. You have a responsibility to make better choices now. If you have new awareness, if you have higher awareness, it is now your responsibility to make better choices, not just for you. And that's what a lot of people say is like, no, do it for you, do it for you. No, no, no. Your poor choices are hurting those you love. Just like my poor choices were hurting the people I love. When you live a virtuous life and lead by example, everyone benefits. You have higher awareness now. It is your responsibility to make better choices. And you have a spotless future. Start now. And that's the main takeaway.
And that's amazing. You really are incredible. You really are. Thank you very much. That was something else. That is a great takeaway. So thank you personally, and I really hope that everyone listening or watching takes something away from this show because you've added so much. Where can folks find you?
Ah, thank you for those compliments. I really appreciate it. Um, Thank you. Yeah, thank
You're
you. I
welcome.
just
Well,
want
I
to
mean
express
it. I
gratitude.
do. I
Thank you for
mean it.
that.
I absolutely mean it, or I wouldn't say it. You really are inspiring. You've got a great podcast. You have an incredibly motivating story. Um, Honestly, because just going back real quickly, what we were saying, a lot of people don't hit that dark spot and they're miserable at what they're doing. And so maybe this is a motivating factor. I don't want to see everyone have to go through what you and I went through, right, to get there. You don't want everyone to go, have a car accident because they need to see the light.
Right.
So that's what I'm hoping this podcast does, is just
And
make folks aware.
that's exact. I prayed earlier, um, and I said just serve, like serve, use your heart, use your mind, like see if you can add as much value as possible. Like that's all I wanted to do. Hopefully this can spark something. And just thank you for the sincere words. I want to express gratitude because gratitude unexpressed I don't think is as valuable. I really appreciate the kind words, genuinely. Okay, that said, where can people find me? So Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can type in Alan Lazarus, Alan, last name Lazarus, Lazaros. So it's spelt like the Bible, but OS instead of US. And if you Google my name, I'll come up. Uh, but Instagram's the best way, at alazarus88, at ALAZAROS88. You can follow me. Between my assistant and I, we get back to everybody. And I would love for you to connect. And again, obviously at Next Level University, you can find us on any podcasts. We can find us on YouTube, all of that.
Thank you. And you do have wonderful assistants, by the way. They've been fantastic, us going back and forth. So thank you. Thank you for being on the show. You've been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Erika. And yes, I do have the best assistants. I appreciate your kind words, and I will make sure to relay that to them.
Oh, well, thank you very much. You have a great evening. Thank you so much.
You too, Erika.
Thanks for listening to today's talk with Erika. Join me next week for another discussion with the experts who help make life easier. Please visit my website, erikadelsordo.com, where you'll find all of my social media platforms and more. And be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Once again, thanks for listening.